Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Oxford Real Farming Conference session on why business ownership matters. I'm Rob Howard. I'll be the chair of the session this afternoon. And we're thinking particularly in this session about the ownership of food and farming businesses. I think obviously the concepts of ownership and principles we might talk about would apply to other things, but we're going to focus largely around the ownership of food and farming businesses and why that matters so much. And of course, it matters enormously. The ownership of a business matters enormously because it dictates what that business does. It influences how that business goes about doing what it does. It influences how much it cares, what it cares about, and ultimately what it doesn't care about. And it's extremely evident that business has not been compatible with the needs of planet and the society and society for many years, for decades. In fact, more than that, it's been part of the problem that we now face from an environmental and a people perspective. And if we're going to tackle the challenges that we face, which are now fundamentally very urgent, then we need to think about whether that can change. Can fundamentally business shift to not being part of the problem or causing the problem, but being part of the solution? And that in its own right is a big ask. Can we shift the status quo and start to think about business as being something that should be looking to solve the problems rather than add to them? But within that, ownership has to also potentially change. Is it possible for business to change if the fundamental ownership structures sitting underneath businesses don't change with them? And that's one of the questions we're going to be thinking about in the session, but also sort of flipping it on its head and thinking about the other side, because I think this will be relevant to quite a lot of people who are watching this session. If you are a sort of values-driven business and you care about being part of the solution and doing things differently, the other side of it is, how do you protect those values in the future when maybe it's not going to be you that is the owner of that business anymore? I mean, it's as certain as death that at some point, if you own a business, you're not going to own it in the future. And the other side of the coin is, how do you lock those values into the business in future generations of owners, and what structure might that take to be able to protect those values in the future? And we've got three great contributors who are going to help us get into this subject over the course of this session. And what we'll do is we'll run each of the three contributors' talks together, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and discussion towards the end. So in the order that we're going to run through the presentations today, our first speaker will be Josiah Meldrum, who is the co-founder and owner of Hodmedod's, along with two colleagues. And Hodmedod's was founded in 2012, growing out of a community project in Norwich. And Josiah and the team work with British organic farmers to grow and sell peas and beans and pulses, probably typically products we would have imported, but they're being grown on British organic farms. And also within that, add diversity to the cropping of those farms to add to the stability and sustainability of those farming systems. And Josiah and the team are starting to think, the ownership team is starting to think about what ownership might look like in the future. As a business with very strong values, starting to contemplate that question as to how do those values get protected in future generations of owners. So we'll hear Josiah's thoughts to start us off. Then we're going to jump to Guatemala to hear from Gabriela. And Gabriela works for Fedecavera, which is a cooperative of cardamom growers in Guatemala, a two-layered cooperative of cardamom growers. And typically, I've been talking to Gabriela about the kind of conventional cardamom growing setup in Guatemala, where there's typically an awful lot of layers in the chain down to a grower who probably gets a pretty low return for their crop, limited amount of resource and time able to be put back into looking after the planet, and minimal opportunities for women in that chain. And what Fedecavera have done is to prove that there is a different way of doing things, where a better return can be passed back to the growers. There are more opportunities within the way the setup works, and there is more emphasis on protection of the planet. So Gabriela will talk to us about the way that Fedecavera are proving that there's a different way of doing things. And then finally, we'll hear from Guy Singh-Watson. And Guy is the founder of Riverford, founded Riverford in 1987. And Riverford grow vegetables and sell predominantly vegetables to homes around the country. And Guy sold 74% of his shares in Riverford to the staff in 2018, about 2.5 years ago, after, I've known Guy for a long time, after I think over a decade, maybe longer, of really trying to wrestle with this question about ownership and what the right route for a values-driven owner is for the future of the business. And I think quite a deep fear that the business might end up in the wrong hands and effectively be stripped of those values very quickly. So we'll hear from Guy as to why it troubled him so much and why he ultimately chose the route of employee ownership. And after 2.5 years, how is that going? So we'll run all the three talks together, and then we'll take the questions at the end of it. Hopefully we'll have quite a lot of time for some questions in this session, but we're also going to run a Zoom session afterwards. So we'd be delighted if anyone wants to stay around and continue our conversation afterwards. But please post your questions into the chat, and we'll cover as many of those once we've completed the talks as we can. So thank you very much for attending this session. I'm going to hand over now straight away to Josiah for us to kick off the presentation. So over to you, Josiah.
Thanks, Rob. That's a great introduction. And it's amazing to be here. And it's very strange being on this side of the screen. I've spent the whole weekend looking in from the other side. It's a very different experience to a usual ORFC if you're on the sort of presenting side. Now, I was a little late or a bit slow with doing presentations, so I've made some slides, which I think is a bit more interactive. So this is me. This is what we're talking about. Do have a look at our social media and get a better feel for what we're doing. And what I want to do really is just tell our story, what we do, why we do it, and where we are now, and why we're at this point where we're thinking about how our business is owned, and why that is becoming increasingly critical to what we see as the future for Hodmedod. Now, as Rob's already mentioned, Hodmedod grew out of a project based in Norwich called the Norwich Resilient Food Project, where we looked at a small regional city, 160,000 people, and asked whether it could feed itself. We looked at horticultural production, we looked at cereals and bread production, and we looked at vegetable proteins, which we could see being incredibly important and increasingly important. You know, get these nitrogen-fixing leguminous crops back into the rotation, but also back onto our plates. They have an incredibly valuable role both in diets and in healthy farming systems. And the challenge really then was simply, how do we get them out there? What do we do? We didn't really think very much about how we were going to be organised or structured. And indeed, for the first couple of years, from 2008 till 2012, 4 years really, we were a part of Transition City Norwich. We were simply running that strand of the project. And in 2012, we realised that Hodmedod as an idea, and then it was called the Great British Bean Project, was getting a bit big. And so we thought the best thing to do is just to quickly incorporate. And in the UK, incorporation as a business is a really, really straightforward thing to do. You can choose model articles, you just sign your name on the bottom, and you send them into Companies House. And that's what we did. And we established a company that was limited by shares. So Nick Saltmarsh, William Hudson, and myself all own shares in a business called Hodmedod. And that was just a vehicle for this process of change that we were engaged in. And over the next few years, we began, developing other crops. We looked at field crops like Carlin peas. These are heritage crops that can be grown in the UK, have been grown in the UK for millennia in some cases, but that we don't really eat. And we began to look at more exotic crops that maybe are more familiar to Gabriela in South America. Things like quinoa and chia. And we gradually got this feeling that we had this rather fantastic network of farmers who were developing new crops, this huge community of, for want of a better word, of consumers who were buying them and were keen to support what those farmers were doing. And really, for the first 2 or 3 years, I think a kind of a clumsy but useful metaphor to think about starting a business is that it is really like becoming a parent. This organization that you've seeded is corporate. You've incorporated it. It becomes a being in its own right, and it can go off and do its own thing, and you kind of steward it through that process. And a bit like having a child, it's an experience that ran parallel for me with the establishment of Hodmedod, is that you have a lot of sleepless nights, you put a lot of time in, it doesn't do what you want it to do, it goes off in different directions, you want it to hold your values and your ideals, but will it? Who knows? And we began to reflect a little bit on, what is this corporate model that we've chosen? What is this ownership mechanism that we've chosen? To be brutally honest, the corporate entity as it is today, is an extractive tool of empire. It was created largely in the UK in the 13th and 14th century in order to allow monasteries to exist without the monks directly owning all the land. And it allowed those monasteries to extract value from the land around them, to extract labor, to sort of use the resources in order to accumulate wealth. And then through the colonial period, those same entities were gradually finessed and they became the vehicles, like the East India Company, for extraction. And in the 1840s and 50s, that business model was really codified, particularly in the UK and the US, to something that we might recognize today with limited liability. So the business is responsible for itself. I'm not responsible for Hobnadod because it's limited. I am to a certain extent, but it has financially, I have limited liability. And this entity really exists in order to extract value from the world around it. And that runs really, really contrary to what we're all about at Hobnadod. And I think it's really got us thinking about how do we ensure that our values within the business continue to be reflected in what we do. And the next stage for Hobnadod is going to be, I think, really quite tricky. And it's something that we've begun to reflect on. So we're at this point now. We're a team of 15 people. We work, so we're quite small by comparison perhaps to Riverford, for example, but probably quite big for a lot of the small enterprises who I know will be watching this. But in food business terms, we're quite small. We work with 25 or 30 farmers who in themselves are responsible for maybe 20,000 acres. So, we have the potential to affect what goes on a lot of land as Hobnadod kind of expands its influence. We have a relatively modest turnover, 1.5 million. There's growing public awareness about what it is that we're trying to do, shifting diet, shifting land use, thinking a bit more about more diverse, sustainable, resilient rotations. And we have an increasingly coherent set of values around that. And I was thinking how best to kind of describe those values. And I think actually I don't know if you're familiar with the FAO's definition of agroecology, the 10 elements of agroecology, which is a really useful resource actually, which was sort of codified in late 2019. And there are, most countries in the world have signed up to these 10 elements. So they are these, but that's all available on the FAO website. And I think there's some really key things in there, around diversity, around co-creation and the sharing of knowledge. That's really critical. And I think these are as applicable to us as a business as they might be to a farmer thinking about how they manage their land and the resources around their land. So this is something that goes beyond the farm gate. So we talk a lot about regenerative agriculture, but I think we also need to think about a whole regenerative food system. And that includes businesses. That includes the efforts of the people that are engaged with those businesses. So that includes our staff. That includes our farmers, our suppliers, the people that we work with whom we have very close relationships. And it includes our customer base much more broadly, all of whom are critical to the success of our business. It is not us. We had an idea, but we are not this thing anymore. It is bigger than us. And trying to find a way to move that to the next stage is really tricky. So some of the questions that we've been asking, and I feel a bit of an intruder, a bit of a parasite here, because I haven't got any answers, but what I have got is lots and lots of questions. So I'm really hoping to hear, particularly from the other two speakers, but also I think from the questions and answer session afterwards. I'm hoping to learn a lot and take a lot away. But some of our questions are, should we be scaling up or should we be scaling out? I think that's really critical. Do we want Hobnadod just to get bigger and bigger and bigger? And I think that is the business model. That is the extractive business model that we're all really used to, and we're in a business context. And I think ideas around sufficiency, around knowing how big your business needs to be, are actually critical to managing, a business in a regenerative kind of world that faces an awful lot of problems. We cannot go on in this exploitative way. So our feeling there is that rather than scaling up, rather than just getting bigger and bigger, we need to scale out. There needs to be more Hobnadods rather than more of Hobnadod. And then we'd be looking at things like investment. If we want to grow Hobnadod a little bit, we need to make some investment in the business. And up to now, Nick, William and I have done that through sort of sweat equity and through our savings, when we needed to do things, and then we've drawn that money back. But that's not a sustainable way forward. And the problem with attracting investment into a sort of a current business model is that more often than not, it means giving away ownership and the perceived value that goes with that ownership. And whoever you give that value to will want to extract something from you. And so you can end up having your values and your principles and the reason that you exist gradually being eroded. And I'm sure, I'm not going to name any, but I'm sure we can think of businesses who have been down that path. And often once they've done that, they try and wheel back, and you have a management buyback and so on. But it's it's messy. Succession. We're not going to be here forever. I'll probably die one day, which is depressing. But that is the nature of our ecological existence. So how do we ensure that we can move away from the business and that it continues to hold those values? William, who's older than me, he's close to dying, is he's thinking about how can he move away from Pop and Dot, and obviously because he has put in such a huge amount of effort and some financial investment, we need to find a way of recognizing that. And then there's sort of concerns that you might have. Will whoever it is, or however the new ownership structure develops, will it continue to have the kind of innovative drive that we've brought to it? The constant interest and drive to develop new ideas. So that's really critical. And then obviously there is just holding on to those core values that we've already outlined. And I think a key part of that is actually recognizing what those values are, codifying them and writing them down, and communicating that both with our staff, with our customers, and with our supplier base. And we are not there yet. We're at the beginning of a long journey, as has already been described with Riverford. This could take a long time, but we're in the starting stage of that process. And part of the thing that we've been thinking about is, where do we want to be in this ecosystem, this regenerative ecosystem that is going to make improvements, is going to leave the world in a better place? Because after all, that is what we are attempting to do. We don't want to extract value simply. We want to return that value back to the community, back to the agri-ecosystems that we depend on, and back to the wild diversity, which is so critical to our life, our existence. And one of the ideas that we're kind of really thinking about is the idea. This is a lovely slide, isn't it? Classic. To see the time I spent on that one. This idea of regenerative retail. How as a retailer, which is fundamentally what we are, we sell directly to customers online. We sell through wholesale, and we sell into catering and hospitality outlets, though sadly not so many at the moment. How do we, as that critical node, that crossing point for information and knowledge, how do we remove ourselves from a kind of a linear supply chain notion to put ourselves as a node in a connected system that facilitates and enables change to happen? And I think that ownership is going to be critical to that. And whether that ownership is dispersed amongst our customer base, our employees, and our suppliers, whether it's a kind of a multi-stakeholder co-op model, whether it is an employee-owned model, which is really, really appealing. And certainly the evidence base supporting employee-owned businesses demonstrates that they do hold their values and they become strong and resilient businesses. So that is very appealing. Or do we go for a kind of a light model whereby we maintain the structure that we've got, but we draw in investment through, for example, through crowdfunding that allows people who have a stake, have an investment, to make a small financial investment in the business in order to help it continue. But I think fundamentally that doesn't overcome some of the issues around the stewardship of the business and how we might want to take it forward. So really, we're sort of teetering on the edge of this kind of complicated, messy process of change. And I think much with many small businesses, we didn't have a clue what we were doing when we were starting it. We are not entrepreneurs. We've never been entrepreneurs. And that's a great thing, I think, in lots of respects. It means that our business is very different from sort of entrepreneurial model. But at the same time, it means that ridiculously, we never had a path or a route. And so we're having to figure out that retrospectively. And I think that is what a lot of businesses do. So I'm really interested to hear in the chat from people who are at a similar place or who are interested in discussing a bit further where we are. And I think that's where my final slide comes in. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to hand over now to Gabriela, who's going to talk a little bit about her work in Guatemala. So,
thank you, Joshua. Hello, everyone. It's very glad to be here from Guatemala. I am here now, and it's amazing that even with this crazy 2020 that we just had, we are able to connect to each other. Just for introducing a little bit, I am a marketing and logistic manager for a federation which is called Fedecovera. We are located in the north of Guatemala. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of what we have been done in our business model, which I think is pretty exceptional, and it has been a case of a study actually in many countries. So I will start sharing my screen. So first, how I mentioned it, we are located in Guatemala. We are a federation of cooperatives. That means that we are the umbrella of other first-level cooperatives, and we are located in the north of Guatemala. We are located in the states of Alta and Baja Verapaz, which are the most important growing areas for cardamom. And also, besides cardamom, we do also other products such as coffee. We do cocoa beans, we do turmeric, we do cardamom essential oil, and we do also forestry development. All these products that I'm talking to you are valuable supply chains that we have developed among the years, which has been possible to do it thanks to our business model that I'm going to show you in the next slide. We call it the real social business because we think we don't do business with the purpose of having a big profit for a single ownership company. It's totally the opposite. We do business in order to have a sustainable social business model that can allow us to help all the cooperatives that are part of Fedecovera. To explain you a little bit, Fedecovera was established and founded in 1976. We have more than 45 years of existence. However, it wasn't until the year 2000 that we started doing business internationally. Why? Because during all the past years, we were trying to find a good organizational model that allowed us to be prepared to go internationally. So I'm going to explain you a little bit about the real social business that I'm talking to you right now, so you can understand a little bit what we are and what we do. So Fedecovera, as I mentioned, is the Federation of Cooperatives. Since we are the umbrella, we are a second-level cooperative, which is formed by 42 first-level cooperatives. So after Fedecovera, we have the first-level cooperatives that are producing different kinds of products, such as the products that I already mentioned, cardamom, coffee. We have also allspice, and then each cooperative is formed by small-scale producer growers and families. So what is the real key of this ownership model is that each small-scale grower has a chance to produce their own production and deliver to the cooperatives. Then the cooperatives do the first added value to this product, and then the cooperatives deliver the production to Fedecovera. In Fedecovera, what we do is we try to give more added value to the product and go directly to the international markets. We do exports worldwide. We do exports to most of the countries of the European Union. We do export to North America, Japan, Asia, other countries such as South Korea. So our market share has been also very diversified, and we try to find niche of markets that are capable and aware of what is good product and a valuable product is. Because it's not only buying and selling products, it's giving the product the right value and then returning to the small scale grower, which is the main figure of all this model. So in each level, there is an organizational model. For example, the small scale grower is a part of the cooperative. Then the cooperative is also formed and it has its own board of directors. These boards of directors are chosen democratically by all the members of the cooperative. And then there is Fedecovera. Fedecovera, the good thing of Fedecovera is that the ownership of Fedecovera is of the 42 cooperatives. That means that the board of directors of Fedecovera are chosen democratically once a year in a general assembly. So that means that for one cooperative, there is one vote. So they have the chance to choose their own board of directors. The board of directors are the ones that are part of Fedecovera. And these boards of directors, as being members of the cooperatives, they are also growers, they are also farmers that in everyday activities, they are part of their cooperatives and they are growing coffee, they are growing cardamom, and they are growing different products. So Fedecovera is led by their own members. So all of we as in my position and all other staff of Fedecovera are part and directed by the board. So the decision makers are the board of directors, which are members of the cooperative. So that gives a lot of added value to the whole model. So why we do businesses in this so challenges and some competitive world? Because after all the sales that we do internationally, we give back to the cooperative 15 different services totally free of charge. So the main reason of existence of Fedecovera is really to maintain the 42 different services given to the cooperatives besides commercializing their products. So we are talking about services such as health services, educational services, all technical advisory services, because at the stage of the small scale grower, they receive all the technical assistance that are given by Fedecovera through their staff. We are around 250 employees being part of Fedecovera, and only the 20% of the part of the staff are in the business part of the activity, giving services as the doing business, commercialization, marketing, but all the rest of the staff, the all 80% rest, are part of the staff that is completely focusing on giving the 15 different services to the cooperatives. So how we do this, how we have been able to achieve this, and it's very simple. The model itself, it's very simple to understand, but sometimes it's complex. Why it's complex? Because it's difficult for the mind to understand that you are doing business internationally for the well-being of many people. So we have a focus on 4 values, which are the human livelihood as a focus. We have taken our customers worldwide as our partners, because we are focused not only to develop once in a time business relationship, but to grow also with our customers worldwide, to take care of the earth and nature, because it's the only gift that we have. So all of the products that we produce are cultivated under agroforestry development. That means that we take care of the nature as our gift, and we are also focused on organic farming. We have organic certification, but it's not like all of the cooperatives are organic, but all are work on the organic practices. And the 4th one value is the integrity and fairness and independency. We give the growers independency to decide whether they want to be part of Fedecovera or not. And we have 3 mainly engagements we have that we have achieved, which are to deliver to the international market high quality products and services. To Fedecovera to become a bridge between the small scale grower, the cooperative, and the international market to complete the adding value to the supply chain. And the last one is act for a better living. Our main goal is that the small scale growers can have a better conditions of living. So I'm going to show you a little bit the integration and services of the valuable. As I mentioned, the small scale growers is the main actor of our supply chain. Then he delivers his products to the cooperative. The cooperative is giving more added value to this product. Then Fedecovera is receiving that product and is continue giving added value to the supply chain. So at the end, the international market has very high quality products and services, but with a lot of added value through the supply chain. The big difference between us and the regular conventional market is that between the grower and until exporter receive a products might be more or less around 50 middlemen, 15 to 5 to 50 middlemen. So that is making very difficult for the small scale grower to really receive a good profit for their products. So through our model, we are trying to make a difference to really add value to the supply chain and give traceability and give responsibility to the whole products that we produce and sell. I'm going to jump directly to the last part of the presentation. We were founded in 1976. 42 cooperatives are members of our system. We have at this moment 7 sustainable agroforestry product value chains. We give to the cooperatives 15 different free services. We provide more than 30,000 producing families are members of Fedecovera. And through our system, we help more than 100,000 people directly benefit. So I think the big challenges of this model is definitely the succession, to try to find new generations who want to continue with the model, and I think we are on the right path. Definitely we have a lot of challenges and a lot of new people that want to join this model, and I think we have a lot of work to do, but we think that doing things differently, we are going to achieve more and more of this kind of ownership. And I hope my presentation has been clear, and thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm going to jump right now to Guy.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Gabriela. That was truly inspiring. Do I need to do anything to share it, or is it sharing? Let's hope.
No, it's currently sharing. You're good to go. If you wanna, if you wanna put it in full screen mode so we can see the whole presentation, just click the slideshow icon all the way in the bottom right, just to the left.
Yeah. I am, but it's not doing it. Maybe I'm on the wrong screen. Let's try this screen. I've got so many screens here. Oh, yep. There we go.
You know, Guy, if you wanna, if you can stop your screen share and then just share one more time. It looks like it's not sharing the full screen. So.
Okay.
And we had you all checked in so early with the screen share.
Yeah, I haven't done that. I can't find the screen share thing. It's covered it up.
Okay.
Jenny,
if you go back to the Chrome tab where we're broadcasting from, and then hit the share screen, and we'll get that sorted.
You're talking to a farmer here. I've got no idea what you're talking about then.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
However, I do have someone here who probably does know.
Okay, perfect.
Chrome tab, what is?
Thank you for your help. And thank you everybody for your patience. We'll get this sorted in just a moment.
Sorry, everyone. You can hear me though, can you? I can carry on talking while we sort this out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, my first slide is just a picture of my family, my birth family, and just to say that Riverford started as a family farm. My dad was a tenant farmer, and just to say that I think family farming ownership of land, up to a reasonable scale is a great model. And but I think there comes a time and a size as the business grew that I started sort of questioning whether it was the right model, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable. Anyway, so we are today. My dad sadly passed away 2 years ago, but the rest of the 5 of his children are all back on the farm doing various things. My thing is the vegetables. So the next slide, is it going to go on? Oh, God almighty. Jenny, it's not moving on the slides. I don't know. I'm clicking on
Guys,
here while it's going.
So we're seeing it show here.
Yeah, you just got it sitting on a tractor. Is that? Yeah, you are seeing it. Okay.
We're seeing it.
Right.
We're seeing
okay,
it.
Sorry. I've got 3 screens on the desk. And it's a bit confusing. Anyway, yeah, so that's me. I started growing vegetables in 1987 on a tiny scale, 3 acres, and selling them to local shops. Didn't really have a clue what I was doing. It was, I was selling them out of the back of my car, which is okay. I've just got to click on that. Okay, and to local shops, and I always say that the kind of values that guided the business really were the values that I inherited from my parents. This is them on their wedding day, and that was, really that I should try and do something useful with our lives, something of value, and I guess my dad was also, he was quite an unusual employer of people, and it became evident to me very early that the success of the business really depended on people. Devon is a rolling landscape, doesn't lend itself well to isolation, and we typically work in small groups of 6 people, and getting those people motivated under quite challenging conditions was clearly going to be key to the business. As the business grew, we ended up supplying supermarkets and starting a veg box scheme. I didn't really want to grow myself, and I kind of always, anyway, started cooperating with other people. So I did actually form a cooperative in 1997 with 10 other growers, none of whom grew vegetables, and actually I think only one of them was organic, but they converted and started supplying Riverford, so we were kind of their marketing agent. And that's Anthony Coker on the left with his sheepdog, and on the right is Peter Richardson up in Yorkshire, because as it grew I decided I didn't want to grow from Devon, and we'd open up other farm-based packing operations, supplying boxes regionally, following the model of Riverford. And I guess this reflects a little bit what Josiah was saying. Do we grow out? Anyway, do we get bigger, or do we try and make more Riverfords? And my idea was that there would be more Riverfords that would help other farmers do similar things elsewhere in the country and have the sort of benefit of cooperating together. And I do firmly believe that, as a species, we are much more prone to cooperation than most economists, politicians, and business people would have us believe. I mean, yes, competition can be fine in driving innovation, but you can get a hell of a lot out of cooperation in terms of driving efficiency and long-term relationships as well. I'm not sure why I put slides of artichokes in. I think it was probably mainly the topography. That is about 100 yards from here, and it's very challenging from growing vegetables, steep land. The business grew I think a compound rate of between 50 and 80% for 20 years. Well, it's now been 33 years, so it did start off with just me and that wheelbarrow in the field, and today we are quite a big business. We employ almost 1,000 people. We'll turn over about 100 million this year, and we pack a vegetable box, I think it's about every 2 seconds. I always walk around the farm on a quiet evening. I do question myself how on earth that happened. And it was a bit like this, I was the boss, I was reaping the benefits, though actually I never took dividends out of the business. Almost everything was reinvested, but I started feeling increasingly uncomfortable you know, I knew I was running the business, you know, kind of for the greater good, but how on earth would other people know that? And I started feeling pretty uncomfortable with the model. And as Rob said, it did take, I think it was more than 10 years, actually, 12 or even 15 of thinking of better models, going and visiting cooperatives and then employee-owned organizations. And it wasn't until 2018 that in June that we took the plunge and did become employee-owned. So I sold 74% of the shares for, I think, £4 million. The business was valued at £22 million. So it was clearly a lot less than I could have sold it on the marketplace, but protecting those values was really what I wanted to do. And I think anyone who thinks £22 million is going to make them any happier than £4 million is a bloody idiot, really. And so what I really didn't want to do is I wanted to set up a structure that was protected from demutualization, because I mean, I'm a great admirer of the principles of the Quakers and the businesses that were set up at that time, and the mutualization of things like building societies and so on. And they've almost all been demutualized through the Weasley work of lawyers and bankers and accountants who, you know, who have managed to undermine the principles that those organizations were set up and turn them into, you know, shareholder-owned organizations just driven to maximize profit. And I definitely didn't want that to happen. We could look at a load of other organizations. These were all businesses which were, you know, values driven, which have been sold. I mean, some of them, certainly Pucker would say that, you know, the investment from Unilever will enable them to do more good things wider. I think, you know, it just doesn't work like that. It might work like that while it's going well, but as soon as you meet any challenge, they'll send in the accountants to work out how they can, you know, extract more model, use that extractive word, which Josiah used. Definitely, I didn't want that. I think what really determines the difference, and it was great to hear Gabriela's story of, you know, was it 40 years? I think that they've been running, maybe even longer than that. You know, I wanted Riverford to, you know, work for the long term, and I wanted to serve its suppliers and its now co-owners and its customers in the long term and invest in long-term relationships. And I think that's absolutely critical, and that's what's just so wrong with businesses, particularly in the UK and the US, but, you know, in the West, where we are, you know, just driven by shareholder value on a very, very short time frame, sometimes measured in months, not even years. You know, how on earth can you make decisions, plan for the future, to protect the environment if you have such a short view? So, you know, what are those values? What did I want to protect? Well, actually, I would, anyone who's thinking about ownership, employee ownership, or anything else, other models, I really would encourage them to sit down and really sort out within their own head and then communicate it to other stakeholders what it is you're trying to achieve. Because I had always assumed that everyone within the business knew what I wanted to try and achieve. Actually, it wasn't until I started to write it down that I realized that they really didn't. You know, it was a very dangerous assumption, but I managed through many iterations, talking to then staff, now co-owners, to distill it into really 3 areas. And we put this into, we do it our way. So the we is that, you know, we're stronger together. We can build a better world together. The we includes not just co-owners, but suppliers and customers and everyone we touch, really. And we will share information, enable decisions to be made as locally as possible. You know, and I guess the sharing goes as far as the planet and the other creatures and plants and animals that we share it with. And the second element, do it, whatever we do, we have to do it really, really well. And I think where a lot of values-driven organizations fall down is that they don't put enough emphasis. They think their values are going to be enough. They are certainly not. I mean, I think if you're in a values-driven organization and you sometimes have added issues to deal with, which means that you even have to be even stronger as a business than a conventional short-term business that can happy to take sort of shortcuts. So the emphasis on doing everything really well, from right up, you know, how you trim a leak to, you know, run our IT department, to the cleaners, the accountants, the customer services, the salespeople, you know, all is done. I think, you know, really, I think the whole business is now run very, very well, and has only got better since employee ownership. And that's about it, because I'm sure there'll be, well, I hope there'll be lots and lots of questions. I guess the ownership structure that we have, I did think about, I know, listening to Josiah earlier, I did actually think about an ownership structure which incorporated customers and growers, and indeed the franchisees who are delivering the boxes, as well as the people who worked here, and didn't go for it on the end, because I just wanted something that was simple and well proven, and there was a model for employee ownership. And quite frankly, I don't care who owns the business, so long as it's not a venture capitalist. It's if you're talking about a really long-term business, it's never going to be sold. It doesn't matter who owns it. I actually view ownership almost as a problem. And I just wanted, so how are we doing 2.5 years on? Financially, we are doing extremely well. It's a little bit hard to unpick it from the effects of COVID and so on. But even before that, we were doing very well. And, I'm becoming increasingly confident that financial performance is related to the engagement of staff. In terms of engagement of staff in decision-making, local decision-making, we have really changed the culture of the business, and there is a tremendous level of engagement throughout it. And I do feel very, very confident that the values are protected. So in 2.5 years on, I have absolutely no doubts that we did the right thing, and I'm immensely proud of it. I probably spend about half my time working at Riverford now and half the time back in the fields, which is what I wanted to achieve, and I have, and I'm really pleased with it. So I'm
I think Guy has finished. You've gone quiet, Guy, but
Guy, it seems like we've just lost your audio. I'm gonna try adjusting something real quick. But yeah, Guy, I believe we've just lost your audio. If you can try and refresh your browser. So all you have to do is press Control and then R, and then click the Enter Broadcast button again. So we'll try to get Guy back in a second. But if Rob, if you want to start moving over to Q&A, we can. I'll work with Guy on the chat to try and get him sorted.
Great, thanks, Vince, and thank you very much to our three speakers for those really excellent and very passionate presentations. Thank you very much, all of you. Also, there were some quite interesting comments in the chat. My favourite ones were, there was a lot of love for your props, Josiah. That really went down very well. And a few of my favourite comments were, I can eat a pack of fava beans in one go, which someone very proudly shared. And is Vince a Superman? He's always there when you need him. He's obviously doing the Superman bit with Guy now. So we've got a few questions. We've only got about 10 minutes, and then we'll take whatever questions we can't cover now into the session, into the Zoom session. So I may be without Guy here. I think there was a question for you, Gabriela, which I will just find and then cover that one, I think, while we haven't got Guy.
I think it was the one from A.B. Rose.
Yeah, it was. I love the work Federica Vera is doing. It's very inspiring. One question: what might it look like to move away from a supply chain to a supply network? So I suppose that transition from being very top down to being much more collective, and how that movement from one to the other might work.
I think that maybe that is the route and the vision that we should follow, because at the end we are not only connecting products to companies, we are connecting people with people around the world. Is to find, I see in this way, is to find the right people, the right products, and the right people and the right needs outside. So there's always going to be people who are looking for different kind of models, and it's more than bills networking. So supply network, I think, is something that we should be looking for in order to be able to continue this model, not only for a few years, but after even us continuing being part of the staff of the company. Because one of the things that has been very important is the leadership that our CEO has also for Fedecovera, and the vision of the board of directors, which, as I mentioned, they are members of the cooperatives, small scale growers with a big vision of how or way they wanted to go with Fedecovera.
Great, thank you very much, Gabriela. And hopefully we can hear Guy. There's a question for both Josiah and Guy. Have you considered any other ways to use your business to devolve power laterally in the business rather than fundamentally change the ownership structure? So I think the emphasis of the question is do you need to change the ownership structure to achieve what you're trying to achieve? Or have you looked at, or did you, for you, Guy, look at other ways you might be able to devolve power through the business, protect the values without fundamentally changing the ownership structure?
Yeah, well, yeah, one can, adopt a more enlightened attitude to management, more inclusive, not assuming that you have all the answers and so on. And that absolutely was part of the journey into employee ownership, was that sort of cultural change. And arguably, a lot of the benefits could be achieved without going employee owned. That doesn't do the thing of protecting the values into the future, and it doesn't address the issues around succession. I think there are other models. You can become a BCorp, and that will achieve some of it. I mean, I guess I personally have a deep-seated resentment that we as human beings are motivated primarily by greed, and it's a bit of a lifetime battle for me to prove that isn't the case. That we are more compassionate, caring, cooperative than most politicians, and so on, and economists in particular would believe us to be, and I guess that was one of the motivating reasons for becoming employee owned.
Great, thank you. And Josiah, do you have anything to add to that in your thinking at this stage?
I probably don't really. I mean, I think that does capture it. I think there's the here and now and where we're at and how we deal with things and how we manage everything from within the business and the business's reach and the impact that it has. But there's also the long term, and it's thinking about the long term and how do you ensure that that continues to happen in an ongoing way, where I think the question of ownership becomes critical.
Great, thank you. And we had a question about cooperatives in the UK and how we could and should be able to encourage a more cooperative economy, and how that seems to not work within the UK, maybe not quite as well as it might do in places like France and Guatemala. And I wondered, from maybe Gabriela's experience, but also, I mean, Guy, you've been involved in establishing cooperatives that have been successful over a few years, but not without challenges. What the panel sort of see as the challenge to establishing a more cooperative way of working within the economy? What's getting in the way of that?
I think that the most important thing that when you form a cooperative, you have to be aware that is going to be something that you're going to share with with many people and families. So I think the maybe the key is the organizational model that you develop and that you involve with the people. So when we first were invited to the session, I was explaining, Rob, that in the past the cooperatives in Guatemala were created to empower people to be responsible also for the nature. And I think that is something that is maybe the key, to give the people the responsibility to take also decisions, not only to produce something, and but also take a real part of us of a model which they can take part and they can vote and they can have a voice and they can have choice and they can grow, and they know that the efforts are focused, are going to have results in the short but also in the long term. So working with cooperative models has been in Guatemala one of the things that has been successfully for many years ago, but I think it's because we are a multicultural country. In Guatemala, and especially in the north area where we are located, most of the people are indigenous people. So with even most of our staff, they need to speak their Mayan languages. They don't only speak Spanish. Quechua is the language that they speak, and most of the team that are part of Fedecovera, they have to speak the Mayan languages. So we need to find the ways to encourage those people, the most unprotected people for the government, to give them empowerment, but not to give them money, not to give them something that is not going to last. We need them to give them models that are going to be last on time. So that's why the cooperatives model, I think, here in Guatemala are very successfully in a model like Fedecovera, who has not only the cooperatives, but also an upper umbrella, which is Fedecovera, has been successfully among the many years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gabriela. And Guy, from your point of view with grower and farmer co-ops, maybe looking at what you see in the UK and maybe what we've experienced in France and elsewhere in Europe, are there any fundamental differences why it seems to work better elsewhere than it maybe does in the UK?
You know, I think culturally we are particularly hung up on this short-term capitalism, selfishness bit in the UK. I think we probably borrowed it from the US, that they seem to have less in continental Europe. You know, I think it's very unfortunate. I don't think it's really what we are as human beings. As Gabriela, you know, I hope, Rob, you would agree that, you know, we've been astounded by just how much contribution and value you can get by allowing more people to be involved in the decision-making process. And you know, I think that's adding, you know, really substantially to our success. And it's also, you know, you have to deal with it mostly, Rob. I think, you know, it's also been a very sort of, you know, enjoyable and enriching experience rather than just, you know, telling people what to do. And you know, if we're going to live sustainably on this planet, you know, you know, the sharing with each other. I mean, you know, unless that becomes part of our sort of mentality, we really have no hope. You know, that, you know, we have to be. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's probably enough on cooperatives. I'm not quite sure I answered the question, but.
No, well, it was a very hopeful way to end. I've been given the 2 minutes to the end. So I'm really hoping that some of you will be able to join us in the Zoom sessions. We've got more questions that we'd love to cover off. The link is now posted up in the chat, so just follow that link and go through to the Zoom session. We can continue where we've left off. But if you can't, it just remains for me to say thank you again to the fantastic contributions from the speakers and the great input through the chat and the good questions that have come through. I hope you've all enjoyed the session. I look forward to seeing some of you in a minute or two in the Zoom session. So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you.